bit and traveled downstairs with Gabby and Clayton. And, you know, sis, she's made up her mind. She is ready to book it out of there. But she's still willing to have a final conversation with Clayton because obviously they care very deeply for each other and their relationship is very strong. And so Clayton is over here begging for Miss Gabriella not to leave. Like, he is beside himself. And my thing with this is there's a lot of fear there. There's obviously, like, he's obviously very scared. I've said earlier that it seems like his biggest fear in this whole situation is that people are going to leave his journey prematurely because they don't want to be with him or for some other reason. And so it seems like that fear really took over and kicked into overdrive. And that seemed like that was the place that his pleading and begging was coming from, of like, I cannot have someone else leave me. I cannot have someone else dismiss this journey. And it seemed like that fear is coming from a place of what he feels or how he internalizes rejection and what he thinks rejection says about him as a person. It seems like he takes rejection very personally, even when it's not personal, or even when he kind of deserves it. Like, it seems like he's not able to just kind of sit back. With the Susie situation, I feel like that's something that wasn't necessarily personal, right? Like, that was something, like, he violated a boundary that Susie had. There's no taking it back, so there's nothing that he can do. And if anyone else had been the lead and Susie was in that same type of position, I think that Susie would have still had the same boundary, and she still would have dipped, whoever the case may be. And so that's an example of where I don't think the rejection is personal. But I think this is an example of, okay, you did mess up. Like, you were not being careful with these girls' feelings. I still think it's valid for him to be in love with 3 different people. And I'm still not here for kind of like slut-shaming him and being like, oh, he shouldn't have slept with all these different people, because that's his business and he can do whatever he wants to do. But I do think that he handled this situation poorly. And I do think that there could have been, looking back, I think there could have been room on both sides for either the women or Clayton to initiate those conversations about what does it really mean to explore your options. What are you really comfortable with seeing me do in my relationships with other people? And how far are you willing to tolerate me exploring my options with other people before it crosses a line and a boundary between us? And so that's a conversation that either the girls or Clayton could have initiated. And looking back, it could have and it should have happened. And so this is a time where Clayton does take some of that blame, and he did mess up. And I don't think that he is able to accept rejection in either case, when it's personal and when it's not personal. And rejection is tough. Rejection is hard. No one wants to be rejected, but it's also a part of life. And it doesn't necessarily reflect poorly on you as a person. You just got rejected. That's what it is. It just means that you're a human. And even in the instances in which you do have some of the blame for being rejected, that doesn't make you a bad person. That just makes you a person who makes mistakes. And again, that's human nature. And so it's very troubling to see that he has internalized rejection so much to the point where he is just operating off of fear and making all these decisions and hosting these conversations from a place of very deep-rooted fear, and is not necessarily, it didn't feel as though he was fighting for the relationship with Gabby in particular. It seemed as though he was fighting for a relationship. He was fighting for the process. He wanted to be able to have his final 2 week with two individuals. He was fighting for, okay, this is how the process is supposed to go. I'm supposed to have 2 people at this point, so then I can make the decision to break it down to one person. I don't want that decision being made for me. I don't want to just introduce one person to my family. Like, it just seemed a lot of it was about the process and his fear. And there wasn't a lot of room for, like, I really, in particular, want this relationship with Gabby. In particular, I want to see where we can go because I see a future with this woman standing right here in front of me. If you want more where that came from, be sure to check out my full recap, which will pop up on the screen.